the Haganah and Ben Gurion, who were trying to do it more through the UN.
Yeah, the Haganah and Ben Gurion
channels
stand out distinctly. And I'm like, there's so much nuance. I would be an idiot to try to claim that I'm like some expert on all of that, all of the happenings of those times.
Yeah.
And, but certainly it's obvious right from the very first bit of research you do on it that the Haganah is distinct, and they did not align with the tactics of a lot of these other factions. And then when Israel is founded, the leadership of Israel, from their prime ministers down to like the rest of their leadership structure, is sort of selected from these various groups, right? And obviously still aligned with these various peoples and things that have formed it. And that's just kind of me speaking logically, not based on any specific factual information, but like if a bunch of mobsters were the best friends that helped get the weapons here, it's not like they're just severing those relationships immediately after it happens. If the Rothschilds funded it, like clearly they are still involved in the project the next year after it's founded. So those interests that founded it are suddenly the top level echelon of people in Israel. And to me, that is the perfect recipe for a deep state. Like that is the ultimate concoction of a deep state right from the start. And Israel is fighting for its survival against these other countries around them from the start in a way that encourages intelligence agency style operations, covert operations, open warfare too. But they're basically like anything goes to save this nation, right? To protect ourselves. And so that is the most fertile soil ever for a corrupt deep state to grow in. And all indication ever since, in my book, shows that a very, very powerful deep state grew in Israel from the start. And lots of Israelis, I think, had nothing to do with it. And I think lots of Israelis were probably totally regular, genuine people. And even Israelis that fought in those wars, I think I'm just assuming, but I would assume there's plenty of people that were wonderful people after that war ended, whatever.
Yeah, you like drawing a little parallel here. Obviously, in every war, there's always some bad apples in the barrel.
War
there
brings it out.
That do some terrible things.
Yeah.
But like, for example, you look at our corruption here in the United States with fucking Iraq and all the shit we did there.
Yeah.
I always have been respectful on our end, as an American too, to like make the distinction between the idiots in D.C. and the offices who are calling those shots and the tip of the spear that they go there and forced to do their job. And I think you're kind of drawing that distinction here in some ways with some of the things they do as well.
Exactly. And when you're looking at the government of Israel, criticizing the government of Israel today, which is what I myself do a lot of, and I'm intentionally always try to draw the distinction that I'm criticizing the government of Israel, not all the people of Israel, and certainly not all the Jewish people around the world. Though I would argue that today a lot of Israelis are raised and propagandized in a way that there's a lot of really horrific videos that come out of Israel because there's a lot of people that align with the sort of like right-wing Likudist kind of mindset about Palestinians that is horrendous and disgusting. But a lot of Israelis today protest what's going on, right? But we're getting ahead of ourselves on that. Because during the 60s, 70s, Israel steals nuclear technology from America using these sort of like mob and intelligence agency connections within the United States. It's called the Dimona Affair. There's a couple different names for different parts of it. The Apollo Affair sort of refers to the theft of the nuclear material from NUMEC in America. The nuclear...
it's nuclear something.
Yeah, right.
Don't worry about it.
And that's quite well documented.
Yes, and the CIA proved that, I believe.
Exactly, and Kennedy was very on their ass about it before he got killed. And they steal a bunch of nuclear material, they steal a bunch of technology, they do a crazy deal with France, they build this reactor in secret that they're not supposed to have, and to this day is not official.
Never admitted
Never been admitted. They have not signed the treaties that everyone else has signed. Super fucked. And Kennedy was on them about it in a big way. And actually, Kennedy was so pissed at them about it that he demanded to inspect the reactor, right? And they set up a fake control room for him to inspect. And they sent the inspectors in, they took him to this fake control room, and they're like, this is fucking fake. And Kennedy, I mean, I don't know how to source whether this quote is real or not. But
they lie to me, and I hate it.
These motherfuckers lie to me constantly, right? Shortly before he died. And I'm not implying that Israel alone killed JFK. I'm implying that there was strong motivations for factions in Israel to support or be a part of or do, whatever they needed to do in that coalition.
That's one I've never seen good evidence for, because the evidence on everything else that had way more power, way more proximity, and a lot to lose, but way less to lose is much more on our own government and the associated acts. Now, could Israel have been probably happy the next day after that happened? And, could they send someone to put in a good word and say, hey, if y'all are thinking about this, go for it? Yeah, but like when I see a lot of the cases on the JFK thing, I think they're total house of cards.
I think that the JFK one is one that I think actually Israel had less to do with than all the other coalition elements. I think that if there is any Israel involvement directly in the JFK thing, I think it's actually much more likely and more accurate to say Jewish mob involvement, although mafia really fits the bill a lot better when you actually look at the names of people that were on the ground there.
That motherfucker was hated by a lot of people.
Yeah. I'd be curious if you've ever heard the story. We don't need to get all into Kennedy right now, but I heard that John F. Kennedy basically had a meeting where he sat down with his dad and his mafia buddy. I forget exactly who it was.
Chicago?
Maybe. And they had a meeting where he was basically like, will you play ball? And John was like, yeah, I'll play ball. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And then he basically double-crossed them. Yeah, it was Giancana.
Yeah,
right?
so I believe it was Giancana.
Yeah.
I don't know the specifics
I don't know how
of whether or not John was in the room or anything, but I do know, and it's been widely reported that, effectively that was a razor-thin election in 1960.
Yeah.
He won because there were a lot of people who voted in Dallas, Texas, and Chicago, Illinois, and some people who weren't alive. And yes, there was the deal that
so the mafia thought it was going to be
buddies.
their boy, right?
Yes.
And then my understanding is that him and his brother Bobby,
that's right,
went back on that word if it was given, and the mafia did not feel good about how they were playing out in that car. So there's a lot of evidence that the mafia was heavily involved and the CIA was heavily involved and all sorts of other elements. Lyndon Baines Johnson.
And the Pentagon. Like that, we always gloss over that.
Exactly.
Fucking Curtis LeMay and all that.
Yeah. So that's one where it's like it's important to follow the actual evidence, the actual facts. And regardless of Israel's involvement, they fucking benefited greatly. Because you can follow the AIPAC trail right to John F. Kennedy's death of him demanding that they register AIPAC as a foreign agent.
A lot of things went right after that.
And then they're like, oh, sorry. And like literally you can see the exact letter for letter of like they had just sent them the documentation to register right before he was killed, and then right after he was killed, Israel sends back a letter basically saying we're not gonna register.
Yeah. Also,
and then they restructured it. It wasn't actually AIPAC; it was the AZC, I think, is what it was termed before that, the American Zionist Council. And then it got retermed into AIPAC, and they restructured so that it wasn't. They got all the Israelis out of it, and it was American now.
Also, LBJ found them very useful too.
LBJ was very useful to them as well.
Two-way street.
Big way.
Two-way street there.
Yeah. Sure. And then the nuclear thing is another big piece of that. And so that's the sort of like middle ground. But for me, one of the big things that kind of colors my understanding of the whole thing is very well summarized by this documentary I cite a lot called The Occupation of the American Mind, which is on Rumble. And it's a documentary that's very well put together, and it's a lot of the people speaking in it are Jewish people, intentionally. They also have Palestinian people. They also have British people. They kind of have the whole thing. And the whole thesis is not about like exactly just the history and the wars and all that. It covers that, but it's really talking about how in the 80s, when there was this massacre in the place called Sabra and Shatila, it was one of the first massacres that was televised to Americans, and Americans saw it, and suddenly they were like, what the fuck? This is not okay, because Israel had allowed in a sort of like extremist group into a refugee camp to basically massacre all these civilians, and footage of all these dead civilians came back to America, and they'd never seen anything quite like it. Maybe a little in Vietnam. And suddenly there's this huge shift against Israel, and Israel kind of realizes like, oh fuck, we've got to win the ideological war, not just the kinetic war, right?
Correct.
And so in the 80s, there's this big shift towards Hasbara, and they hired a bunch of like the world's top propagandists to do it, and they basically like wrote out a set of documents about this is how you represent what we're doing, and this is how you represent it to the world. And that thesis, that mindset has pervaded everything Israel has done ever since. And it's only gotten more and more important ever since. And when you look at October 7th till today, you see it everywhere.
They've really fucked it up though.
They've really fucked it up, and they were not ready for that.
Yeah.
But like one of my favorite anecdotes that they talk about in this show, and they show footage of it, is that back in the 90s, we had The Apprentice right here, where Donald, because we're the capitalism,
early 2000s,
right? Yeah, early, right, where we are all about capitalism, and so it's like people. apprenticing under Donald Trump to get the job as the executive, all that's very capitalism, right? They have a parallel TV show called The Apprentice. The Ambassador. And I don't think it still runs now, but it was like, timeline synced. And that was all about who could run the best Hasbara, who could do the best explanation of Israel's, being an ambassador to the world of Israel. And there's this famous quote that I don't think is from the show. It's from one of the, like, an Israeli PR guy or something. That's like, how does it go? It's easy to sell milk because when you sell milk, half the people you sell it to aren't going to say that you support killing children and that you know what I'm saying is selling milk, selling a product, or is lemonade is the example he uses. It's like selling lemonade is not going to have people calling you all these names and saying you're a terrorist and saying you're an occupier and a colonizer. And so he's like, so our job is way harder. And they have this whole show. It's like this whole cultural thing of like, how do you represent Israel outwards? And it's about how you always talk about the rockets raining down. You always humanize, like, how would you feel? What would you do, right?
Israel has a right to defend itself.
Exactly. It's all these phrases that are intentionally canned phrases that we hear all the time to reframe the conversation and to always, flood the zone and with just like propaganda. And so once you get a firm grasp on the Israeli perspective on propaganda, it recolors how you intake information today. And anyone can use those techniques. Certainly, Al Jazeera can use those techniques, and Hamas can use those techniques.
Absolutely.
They do sometimes, for sure. That being said, when you get to modern day Israel, which was kind of my first initial feeling, and it's pretty obvious right away that you're talking about it's a state that was funded by the most powerful banking family the world has ever known back in the day. And there's, a lot of debate about whether the Rothschilds still have that kind of power or not. And it doesn't really matter in that sense. Israel was backed by these fucking huge bankers that like had insane power and had, it's quite well documented that Jewish people, though they are a minority, and though they are often, discriminated against, they are the wealthiest and most successful racial group.
They stick together.
And they stick together,
very well.
Right? They stick together. And to their credit, they stick together, right?
Yes. Yeah.
But that means that when October 7th happens, all of them are deeply incentivized for understandable reasons to group up and protect Israel.
Sure.
And they're also backed financially by the United States military to this day, to the tune of billions and billions and billions of dollars, and weapon systems and the Iron Dome and all this shit. They've got helicopters and planes and nukes, right? That they're not supposed to have. And they're literally fighting against and we'll get to the counter argument here in a second on this, but they're fighting against an impoverished people that like have some AK-47s, like literally kids are throwing rocks at Israeli soldiers because they're just like, fuck you. Like the Palestinian people are so beat down and so captivized that they have nothing to fight with. They don't have a government. They don't have a fucking, especially in Gaza, they don't have a government. They don't have an intelligence agency. They don't have billions of dollars. They don't have fucking tanks. They don't have weapons. They don't have shit. And so it's like the rockets raining down is like, it's pretty well known that the rockets coming from Hamas across the border into Israel, the strategy is not that we're going to hit Israel with them and we're going to like kill people exactly. The strategy is that I have a rocket that cost me, $5,000, $10,000, and it cost the Iron Dome like what, I don't know, $1 million, $500,000 to shoot an Iron Dome rocket. So it's just a war of money, right? War of attrition in that sense. And so there's all this sort of like confounding of the narrative that happens around what is happening, right down to the level of it is very well reported from sources in Israel that Bibi Netanyahu himself funded Hamas. Yeah, that quote. Intentionally propped up and funded Hamas.
Yeah, it's a quote from a Knesset meeting in 2019, and I believe the exact quote was, if you want to ensure you don't have, I'm paraphrasing, if you want to ensure you don't have a two-state solution, you must be okay with funding Hamas.
Yeah, and the last guy that was in power in Israel that promoted a two-state solution, actually got the Oslo Accords signed, got murdered.
He did.
Shortly after.
Yep.
And there's a lot of controversy about, whether that was a conspiracy
Rabin.
or not. Yeah, whether Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated by a Mossad asset or just some random right-wing dude that hated him. And I'm not claiming there's any clear answer to that, but But there's all this convolution around what's going on right now. But when I just look at it with common sense, before I know anything, it's very obvious that there's an underdog and a fucking powerful nation here.
Yes.
And that powerful nation is backed by the Western Empire.
Now let's look at this in a couple different lenses here, and let's keep a pin on it. So don't let me get off a couple things. I want to make sure we hit Netanyahu on one hand as far as like his whole life, and then the concept of Hamas as it pertains to the actual Palestinian people caught in the middle of this. So we'll put a pin in that. On Netanyahu, I made a comment in episode 134 with Joby Warwick, the first time I recorded with him. We were recording in January 2023. And maybe it was like 2 hours and 25 minutes in that podcast. Something was coming up about Israel. And I made a comment that after I said it, I thought in my head, I'm like, did I just say that out of my ass? Can I actually defend that? Or did that just sound like the thing to say? And the comment was something along the lines of, there's a strong linkage and comparison between like a almost dictatorial holding on to power in a way between Netanyahu and Putin. Like, what's the difference there? So I kind of like, after that, I didn't say anything like in the podcast, but afterwards I was like, you know what? I think I talked out of my ass there. I think I need to actually go look at this a lot more. So ironically, I spent 2023, my main topic was Israel and the Middle East. I was ass deep in this shit. I've read every word that Netanyahu wrote. And, you know, he's interesting because I will give him this. He's a William Jefferson Clinton level politician. He's a very smart guy. Yep. But he's so full of himself that he reveals a lot of things about himself that he thinks sounds great, and it does not.
And about his plan, and about where things are going, and about what countries we're going to take over next.
And so when you look at this, you know, I was telling you about this in the car, and this is something you should really look into. The key moment in Netanyahu's life, just based off of the words he said, as I can take it, is when his brother Yoni was killed in 1976. His brother Yoni was like a badass special forces guy, commander. Mm-hmm. They go to do a raid in Entebbe, in I believe Uganda. Is that right? Yeah. And it's on like an airfield, and long story short, he's the only one that gets killed. And it like broke his heart, the whole bit. And after that, Netanyahu starts a world organization, like a conference kind of thing. I forget what it was called, but it was basically talking about radical Islamic terrorism. Mm-hmm. And he was the one who kind of started that line. Now he rises to power in 1996, becomes prime minister from 96 to 99 for the first time and everything. And he later, after Ehud Barak beats him, he comes back in the next government under, I want to say, Sharon, where he's the finance minister. And he was actually a fucking incredible finance minister. Like, he really rebuilt their economy at the time in a lot of ways. The reason he left the finance ministry, though, was over a political principle. And it was, they were planning on giving Gaza to the Palestinians. And this lasted like a year. He said, the minute you do that, I have to resign. Mm-hmm. And to his credit, I guess, like, he stuck to his guns. He resigned. I bring this up because it was a personal point to him. Now, that's 2005, 2006. They give that up. The terrorists who went across the border in October 2023, when Gaza was given over, those kids, at the time, they were 0 to 5 years old, because these were all like 17 to 23-year-olds, something like that. They grew up in a 20-mile space where they really couldn't go anywhere, were locked in. And actually, let me steelman this and see some of this from Israel's perspective for a second. If you're Israel, you're in a lose-lose situation here. So you give them land because you're like, all right, we're going to give them land so we can say we did something. We're going to pull all our people out. But now we have a group of people, some of whom won't care, others who are going to be terrorists hiding among them, who now live on our border. And there's 4 borders of Gaza, okay? You have the north, which touches Israel, the east, which touches Israel, the south, which touches the Sinai, which Egypt technically owns, but it's no man's land and terrorists run it, and they don't fucking like the Palestinians, so there's nowhere to go there. And then the west, which touches the sea, but Israel has to stop them 3 miles out because now it's international waters that they could get around and do attacks in Israel, the bad people, which means they can't get to the coral reef, which I believe is 8 to 9 miles out. Therefore, they can't have a fishing industry. Yeah. So they lock in a 20-mile zone. And I always say to people, I'm like, you know, we got enough problems with like Mexico and the cartels and shit on our border. Put that aside for a second. Imagine it's 2006 and Iraq is on our border. we'd have the biggest wall of all time.
But
right?
important context there.
Please.
It'd be our fucking fault. Because like it's Israel's fucking fault that they did like, and I'm not saying that that's like the solution or it's like the problem goes away. I'm just saying that when you choose to move into a land surrounded by Arabs as Jews, and you choose, and the modern Jews there today did not choose this, but their forefathers chose to move in and take that land with the tactics they did. And there's fucking blowback to that. Like when you treat these people this way, when you fight them in this way, and you wind up in this situation, that is your fucking fault. And so when they wind up with the Gaza Strip with this population of captive children growing up to become Hamas terrorists, they are in a lose-lose situation of their own making. Because the truth of the matter is that my interpretation is that Netanyahu allegedly allowed the October 7th attack to happen because that would give precedent to going into Gaza and wiping everything out.
It's not implausible. Let me start with that. If you could remove all emotion from this, all human capital, everything, take away everything for a second. We're not looking at this as like a human being. We're just looking at this as like an AI. It's a smart move. It would be the smart move.
Oh, 100%.
Right? What evidence do we have of that happening?
I am not well versed enough because here's the thing. I'm going to make a rational argument, but not a sources argument because the sources are very convoluted and hard to trust. And I would want someone with like military experience, like someone like a Scott Ritter to talk about like this source is from this place. And this is like, because then you can follow that chain all the way up to like literally who's writing it, where is it coming out of the military, and why do we trust that source? And I have seen sources that claim
the one who
it.
diddled kids.
I think there is a scandal like that in his past.
There's a couple.
Yeah.
Maybe
maybe
we can find someone different.
I would say at the same time that I also have a hard time trusting when someone who speaks out against the regime from within the inside, with inside information, has a kid scandal like that. I look very closely, and I have not looked at Scott Ritter's at all.
He's had multiple.
I always look closely to make sure that it's a real scandal.
That's
right?
fair.
You know what I'm saying?
He has had multiple though.
Yeah. But what I mean to say about this argument is that I have seen sources that claim that, but I always have a hard time kind of trusting them, and you have to do a lot of digging to get to the heart of it. But like one thing that we know for sure is that is one of the most militarized borders in the fucking world, and that Israel is a surveillance like machine. Israel is the home of like so much of the global information surveillance industry, and the vast majority of Israelis have served in the IDF. And actually, like, let's hold on. There was clearly a stand down order, and we know there was a stand down order, and that is well reported.
How do we know
stand down because Israel has admitted that there was a stand down order, and it was reported in Israel journalism, is reported in American journalism, is reported all around the world that there was and it took a while for it to come out. Right. It took a couple months, as far as I remember, for it to come out. But there was a stand down order issued during the October 7th attack that caused a delay. Right.
Yeah. Why did they say they did that?
I don't remember if there was a good reason given. Honestly, I don't recall. I would have to look back at the reporting from 2023. But also the other thing that was admitted later on is that the Hannibal Directive was enacted, which is the, I guess, Israeli military policy that if hostages are being taken, you don't let hostages be taken at all costs, including killing Israeli civilians. And that was admitted by Israel and reported in Israel publications that it was admitted. And it was known beforehand because when you look at the photos of the cars that are all melted out from Nova Music Festival, that's not something that RPGs do. That's not something that AK-47s do. Hamas did not have weapons that can fucking melt cars, right? That is clearly Apache helicopter fire. And that was reported at the time by people just looking at it that had expertise, being like, this is fucking not a thing. That's
Again, in the middle of it. Now, how it's propagandized later is a separate issue that we can talk about. But in the middle of like a mass event like that, if there are, backups called in to try to stop something, perhaps they're trying to shoot at people that are perpetrating the attacks.
Yeah, it could be accidental. The implication from the Hannibal Directive is that it was sanctioned intentionally, and I think it's a horrendous reasoning, but I can see the reasoning of why you would do that, because then you wind up like the moment that Hamas has hostages, look where you wind up, right? But there's all these little elements where like you're telling me that hang gliders flew into Israel, like this fucking bastion of intelligence and security, and then it takes them so long. Like, so I did the math because I'm an ultra marathon runner. I did the math on that fucking that retaliation on how long it took them to get to the border to fight back against Hamas. And it took them about the same amount of time as it would have taken me to run from Tel Aviv to the border on foot. If I'd been really hoofing it, took them what, like 8 to 10, 12 hours, something like that, 7 to 12 hours.
I don't remember.
It was a long time, and I don't remember the specifics either. But I remember like that a week after or something like that, doing the math of like, wait a minute, like Israel's a fucking narrow little country. You're telling me that it took them that long to realize, like either they're incompetent as fuck, like fire everyone in your military, or there was something going on there. And when you look at the rhetoric, when you look at Bibi's statements, when you look at the Likud party's general sentiment towards Gaza, the Palestinians, and the Greater Israel Project, which you can kind of piece together from various people's statements over the years.
Is that like Smotrich's thing about like the biblical?
I think that different people have different, like, I think different Israelis probably have different levels of biblicalness versus different levels of like just military objectiveness.
That motherfucker.
But there's crazy. Like, there were Israelis that were starting to just wear patches on their fucking shoulders that showed the Greater Israel like borders, which is, to be clear, a much more expanded version of Israel that includes parts of all these other countries around them. And obviously Gaza is one of the first steps in that. And so when you look at their long-term plans for like, we need to fucking take this land, and they've tried before, but like the international community is repeatedly like, you can't fucking do that. That is a war crime. Like another one, right? Which also, you know, collective punishment is a war crime, right? Killing civilians, killing doctors, killing journalists. All these are war crimes, sanctionable.
Yeah, and there's a couple things here. Number one, we know thousands of people are dying.
Thousands.
Number two, just to keep the emphasis on what's important, which is let's stop people dying. We also got to be careful with the numbers on every report because they are coming from the Gaza Health Ministry, and we don't want to cut out the legs of the argument from under it. Number three, there is censorship going on, as best as I can tell. I guess Israel doing that from people who are trying to, I don't know, blow the whistle on some of the things they're seeing. There's one, and I forget his name. Maybe we can pull it up, Alessi. There's one Jewish doctor who's been working at the hospitals in Palestine who's talking about how there's clearly to him orders being given to shoot indiscriminately at people that they could be telling the IDF, oh, that's a terrorist, and it's fucking kids and getting
kids
shot
with
through the heart.
Clear sniper bullet
Correct.
fire.
Through the heart.
And to be clear, there is well-documented cases of that going back way before October 7th.
Yes.
The context to remember here is that on the day of October 7th, Israel had in its jails and prisons more Palestinian hostages that had no charge of a crime, that were just in an undetermined amount of detention, than Hamas took in all of October 7th. So like when you look at the hostage balance, like Israel had this huge amount of hostages from Gaza and from the West Bank, mostly from Gaza, already just chilling. That's this constant flow of like, they'll break into your house at night and take your kids. They'll break into your house and take you. They'll arrest you for random fucking crimes. You have no like two-tier justice system for days. And so the number of hostages that Israel already had was way exceeding what then Hamas came over and took. And that was atrocious. Don't fucking do that. And then so now Hamas has some hostages. They give some back. Israel still has all these fucking hostages all along. Like, and call them what you want to call them terrorists and you not terrorists. But like the imbalance of like the way that Israel always frames things is so clearly propagandized in every form, right from the start every time, when you actually know even like a basic amount of information about it. And even if, like, for example, the death numbers are fudged, the death numbers are still out of control. Even if the bomb's tonnage is fudged, like most reporting I see is saying that Israel has dropped more tonnage of bombs on Gaza since this war broke out on October 7th than were dropped in all of World War II combined. Probably excluding the atom bomb, but I'm not sure if it's actually excluding the atom bomb.
Yeah, where are we
I don't
getting
know.
that?
I don't know how you measure that.
I mean, obviously, you can see imagery, like they leveled Gaza. So, I don't want to get into
But that's a good example, again, where it's like, I don't even trust that kind of a number because it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
We can just look and see from video footage, from like the basic logic, that this is an insane retaliation for what happened. And we know that that population is like half women and children at least, right?
All right, so let's separate something for a second. Let's agree that what Israel's doing at this point to continue perpetrating what they're doing on Gaza is wrong, and some of it is tantamount to genocide. Fine. In the general concept of things, if I don't really use these terms, so I never remember which one is the right definition. But if you could like steel man the Israeli perspective, not on killing kids and killing innocent civilian women and men and stuff like that, but on the idea of they are one, whatever it is, like 10 million population pocket in the middle of billions of Arabs and Islamic states around them who have one spot, and therefore it's like, can you see where they're coming from to be like,
oh, totally.
We're trying to exist. We only have one little spot. Yes, it's a very important piece of land, but like all these other places have all these spots and they're trying to completely get rid of us. We're the good guy here.
Yeah. And I can see how you would also clearly, like, you're right that Hamas is a horrible organization. Hamas is a terrorist organization that does terrorist acts, and they are equally evil to not equally, but they are also evil to the Palestinian people, the Palestinian
they're also
civilians.
not Palestinian.
They're horrible people.
Yeah,
and most of them are being shipped in. There's this whole other terror network that is, being funded by Iran and all these other, it is not as simple as just saying like the Palestinians are all innocent and the Israelis are hurting them, obviously. And yes, the argument of like, what would you do? Like Israel has to defend itself to a certain degree, I understand, but also like, if a bully bullies one kid in my classroom, then it's like maybe the teacher should step in and like sort this out and help everyone get along. But if a bully walks into a crowd of like 100 best friends and starts bullying one of them incessantly, and then all the best friends start being like, "We'll fuck you up," is it like, I'm sorry, dude? Like, what are you doing?
Where's the line?
Why are you doing that?
Yeah.
You should probably learn to make friends. And as a teacher, in my experience, actually, all bullies are just kids that were hurt. And I'm not intentionally trying to say that, like, I'm not trying to overdraw this metaphor, but it's in a teaching world. A lot of bullies are actually kids that were hurt, don't have a family that loves them, things problems at home. And once you teach them to be diplomatic with with the kids that they're trying to get along with by bullying, they actually are often the biggest sweethearts. And they're often like totally wonderful people once they learn the social skills to do it. And in a certain parallel, I would wish that Israel would try, and I know Israel will say, and they do, that we've tried giving them the land back. We've tried diplomacy. We've tried giving them things. And what do we get in return? Rockets raining down on us. And it's like, yes, to a certain degree, that is true, like for sure. And to a certain degree, that is the consequences of your own fucking actions. That is the consequences of you terrorizing these people. And you're inevitably going to have terrorists growing up in that population that will continue to terrorize you. That is not an excuse to take the low road and to bomb all the next generation of them and to make a whole fucking 1,000 million more terrorists, right? Because that is all you're ever going to do. You're either going to eradicate every single one of them, or every single last one of them you didn't eradicate will hate you till they die, and they will do everything they can to kill you because you've killed their family, their parents, their sisters, their loved ones. So what do they have to lose, right? If I lived, like, let's be clear, I don't, so thank fucking God I'm not. But if I lived in Gaza, I would probably be a fucking terrorist. Like, I am such a rebel. I am so inherently a rebellious person.
I know what you're saying.
And I think that most people, if they lived in Gaza and their family and their people had been treated that way, most people with a spine would fight back, right? And if you didn't fight back, you're kind of a fucking coward.
Yeah, I talk about this a lot with any form of terrorism, regardless of where it is. It's like, I don't empathize with the act. You go blow up a building of 100 people, like, fuck that and fuck you.
Yeah.
What I do always try to understand for a future perspective in trying to make the world a better place is trying to empathize with what got the person to that point.
Yes.
What was in their environment that got them to that point, and how can we improve that in the next generation so there's one less of them at the very least.
And I would wish upon those Palestinian people that have been wronged like that I would hope that they can mature enough to take that high road. Because when I was younger, I would have joined up. I would have been like, fuck this shit, I'm fighting. But as you get older, you realize, like me now, I would be like, no, there needs to be a high road here because violence is an endless cycle of violence. And I think Israel is the one in the position to try to take that high road. And the problem about a high road is you have to stay on the high road. And just because you take the high road and then the bully punches you again doesn't mean you like, oh, now I'll just bully him back. It's like, that's just a fucking endless cycle of violence. And so, like, that's sort of this dynamic that is There is no good win, but ultimately, if you keep on bombing as your solution, you're just going to keep on killing and you're going to keep on getting hated, and the whole thing will just keep on cycling, and you're going to keep on losing American support because Americans more and more are looking at it like, why the fuck are we sending billions of dollars over there? Like, why am I paying taxes on my labor here in the United States to send over to your country so you can bomb your problem, while simultaneously you're passing anti-speech laws in my country that is making it so that I cannot speak out about this other foreign government? I can say all the shit I want about the CIA and about the government and about President Trump on my fucking in my country, but I'm not allowed to criticize another country, or I might get deported, or I might get like lose my college degree or whatever the fuck goes on. Like, not to mention you can't boycott Israel now, anti-boycott sanctions, divestment
wasn't there
policies.
something they were voting on the other day?
They were about to, and it got pulled.
That's good.
Yeah, I mean, I was on the trigger to start making videos of like, these are all the companies you are not allowed to boycott. Just to be clear, do not boycott these companies. It would be illegal if you were to boycott these fucking companies, because that's the kind of person I am. Because like, don't fuck with our Constitution, bro.
Yes.
Like, that is not a winning strategy either, right?
Now here's the thing I always bring up on this that's interesting. Okay. First of all, it's very odd. Like, it's called AIPAC, right? So AIPAC.
American.
Replace that I with anything, not China. Okay, that like you start with people that we view as enemies, right? Don't even the ones that we view as enemies. Don't even replace it with that. Replace it with a B for Britain.
Yeah.
If it were ABAC or whatever the fuck it would be called, people would be like, why the fuck is Britain lobbying our government to tell us what to do? You know what? You might be our friends. We fought a fucking war 250 years ago about
Britain
this.
does and can lobby our government, and they register as a foreign agent to do it.
Right, which is different.
And I would argue it's also fucking stupid, and we should stop that. We should stop all of that.
But it's designated.
It's designated. And I'm not a super expert at all the legal implications of this, but the registration, one of the basic things it does is it forces different standards about where is the money coming from. Right? So that we have a lot more transparency about registered foreign agents, about where the money's coming from and what it's funding and all this stuff.
Sure.
Whereas AIPAC does not have to do that because it's American.
Right. And so, point being, like, I'll put myself in Israel's shoes for a second. We have a democracy here in America that...
Well, we have a republic that is democratic in nature.
Okay. Either way, semantics, I know, right? A free place of ideas where, which also has its downsides of people being able to curry influence and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I'm all the way over here in the Middle East. Everyone hates me. These guys, this country is my friend. I'm going to find every way I can to keep them close to me. And one of the ways I can do that, there's other ways we've talked about already today, but one of the ways I can do that is to curry influence there, which they've always been doing. So they use our system that we allow them to do. They're allowed to do it. It's in the open. And they curry favor among our politicians because they give money that they're freely allowed to give to do it. And so I always turn around and say on this, why the fuck haven't we looked internally to stop that? Why do we not say they need to be a foreign registered agent? Like and 2 years ago, pre-October 7th, the easy argument would have been because they already have too much influence. And you could still make that argument today. But if you look at, like, I'll use the example of Thomas Massey on the right side, which is completely AIPAC'd up, except for him. And he's a libertarian. He's listed as like a Republican, but he's a pure libertarian guy. When he's come out against AIPAC, which no one on his side does, it's upped his numbers. They go after him, but it's that's what I'm saying. Yep. It's upped his numbers. So why is America not looking internally and saying, you know what, like, fuck it. They're right now, they're free to pay candidates that may be more supportive of them. But like, people don't want to see any countries, let alone people that, even claim to be our allies, influencing what we do here in America and influencing laws here in America. So why don't we change that? Why don't we look internally and change that?
I would argue there's two answers to that at least. And the first one is that a process of public support shifting takes a long time, right? And so Massey is an example of someone who stands on principle and his numbers have gone up because he stood on those principles, right? But all the other right-wingers that are already funded by AIPAC, they're fucking cushion. They're making all their money. There's probably some other checks floating around. They are doing great from all that influence from AIPAC. And so you would have to slowly unseat those people from like the public voting them out over time. And that would not be easy because AIPAC will pour fucking money in to defeat you. But The other big one, and this is like the big fucking crux on the center of the table that none of the pro-Israel people have a very rational or strong argument about, is Epstein. Like Epstein is clearly it is clearly a Jewish organization on behalf of Israel. And I think that it is just one cell of a global trafficking network of many different blackmail operations, Diddy included, that because like they're all plugged into the human, they're all plugged into the drug because they're all doing business together, the money launderers. It's not like all human are Jewish and Israeli, but Epstein's cell was clearly Jewish and Israeli aligned. And that blackmail is still being held by whoever his handlers were. And it does not line up in any picture in my mind that the CIA was running that.
I agree.
And it certainly does not line up that Qatar was running that. And people have even tried.
You would say that. You're a paid Qatari
I know,
agent.
right? I've got to get my fucking paycheck somehow. And I've even heard people allege that he was a Saudi asset, which is like, Leslie Wexner's entire life was dedicated to financing pro-Israeli organizations, to founding the Wexner Heritage Foundation, to Holocaust remembrance things, to
he was one of
pro-Israel
George
stuff.
Bush's reps in the Israel side.
And that's another element of this too, is I recently heard people discussing how like Israel's all alone. Like Israel doesn't have a foundation. Israel doesn't have all these powerful groups. It's like, are you kidding me? Like Israel has foundation on foundation on foundation on foundation. Israel has entire censorship like networks of organizations. and like I hate to go down the route, but like the anti-Semitic conspiracy theory, which is a really propagandistic term, that there's a lot of powerful Jews in powerful places that can pull a lot of strings. And I'm just talking in terms of facts. I'm not saying that it's like some giant Jewish cabal conspiracy that they're like controlling everything through this. I'm just saying that when you happen to have like a Jewish person as the CEO of MSNBC and of Fox News, not Fox News is an alignment of Murdoch, but Facebook and all these places, banks as well. And it's not all of them, but it's a fuckload. They are not anti-Israel, and they have every incentive to be pro-Israel, right?
We do also. I'm not denying that there are a ton of organizations within media, and particularly, and some other stuff where you can look at the top of the C-suite at different companies and see that there is a Jewish person there. But sometimes I think the other side of this argument is that we focus in on all the ones that have that, and then kind of like delete all the ones that don't. And so I'm not saying that there's not influence there. There is. Guys like Arnon Milchan exist. Yeah. All right, you guys can Google him. It's all admitted, right? Like that is a real thing.
So here's where it gets conflated into an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory kind of an attack on this. I'm not saying that they control everything. What I'm saying is that they are in those positions. That person individually is that thing, and that person individually is that thing. If you work at that company and you're like the most popular news anchor at MSNBC, and your CEO is going to Israel to do the Menahaki Games. I forget what it's called. It's like what's his name? Brian Johnson. I forget. And you start coming out hard against Israel on your like primetime show on his network. Is he gonna are you gonna keep your job? Is he gonna? And I'm not saying he'll for sure fire you. I'm just asking will he are you allowed on his network to do that?
I think no, it definitely gets into incentives.
I mean, in some regards, it's his company. It's a private company. Well, it's actually a public company. But in some regards, I
know what you're saying.
Fair. But what I'm saying is that Israel is not alone. I'm saying that Israel has very powerful partners in very powerful places in very many industries, including a lot of cultural and media aligned industries, as well as banking and finance industries.
That's the one thing. It's very easy. And I see a lot of guys do this where they just say oh, this guy's in charge of this company, Jewish connections to Israel. But it's not that simple. I also grew up in New Jersey, bro. All my friends are Italian, Irish, Jewish, Greek, and Mexican. Yeah. You know what I mean? So
that's the thing is that every Jew is an individual, right?
Yes.
And they all have their individual loyalties and opinions and perspectives. And a lot of Jews that live around the world do not support Bibi Netanyahu.
That's right.
Right? Like we were saying earlier, a lot of them support Israel, but not Bibi. A lot of them don't even support, they're not even really that down with Israel, right? So there's this individuality to each of these people.
And you can be down with Israel as the country and have a allegiance to that as someone who's a part of the Jewish diaspora and not be down with the current actions. The same way that I'm not down with fucking Dick Cheney's regime.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we got to make
100%.
that distinction to be able to have the conversation, because there's so many people who are just going so far with this, and they're commingling all the terms, and it's getting like uncomfortable to listen to. If we're going to have a diplomatic conversation to do what? Stop fucking people dying here, children dying? Like, let's do it in a way that actually moves it forward instead of playing like a fucking this guy game. You want to play it with a guy like that who's directly up on the screen, who's directly tied to Epstein and has said a lot of interesting things that fucking John Kiriakou went in on with Piers Morgan.
Dershowitz is still walking free.
Right? Like,
no one's fucking put him on trial.
Knock yourself out with that. Yeah. But, you know, there's so many threads we hang on to with certain people. It's like, focus on the people who we can tie things to that are not doing things that are positive to, say, stop the war in Gaza.
But there is an element to this that I think is not contentious, though it is uncomfortable to talk about, in that suppose you have 10 Jews around the world in their own individual lives, you know, running companies and being successful people in whatever they're doing, right? Israel's like some of them don't like Israel, some of them love Israel, some of them in between, whatever. Israel still has all the ability in the world and incentive in the world to pressure them to like Israel, right?
Okay.
Right? Agreeable? Yeah. As in, I'm not saying that like they're all going to get along with Israel and they're all going to go along with it. But Israel certainly has every reason to approach them and be like, why would you not support us? And and I think that every Jewish person around the world feels this pressure in a certain way. And some people have no problem with it. That's fine. It's like, those are my people. I love them. Mm-hmm. And some people, I think it's uncomfortable to be a Jew right now, because if you have any criticism of Israel, you can be, you know, ostracized by your people. You can be kicked out of the family. Like there is immense cultural pressure from the Jewish people, for perfectly understandable reason, to conform to, like, you must support the, you know, at least the basic truth of global Judaism, because we are a people at risk at all times, right? And so Jewish people are targets of pressure in a way that makes it complicated for them to deal with, right? In that it's not like, if you're Jewish, you just have to make a personal choice. Do I support Israel or do I not? You have to, if you want to not support Israel as a Jewish person today, you unfortunately have to make a conscious choice to go through some shit if you're going to,
that's right,
if you're going to in any way speak up against it or do anything against it. And I think that every Jewish person online that is like in the media that speaks up against it can attest to how they are treated by the rest of the Jewish community for that kind of criticism. And so the other aspect of that is subtle, and I don't want to overstate it, but it is an important factor to think about in the intelligence agency world here, is that when Israeli intelligence, very important distinction, is recruiting, the first person you're going to go to is Jewish people. Like, obviously, if you're the mafia and you're trying to recruit somewhere and there's an Italian there, you're going to go to the Italian, obviously.
Exactly.
Because there's always been in-grouping of racial stuff when you're doing secret stuff, when you're doing criminal stuff, when you're doing covert stuff. That's obvious, because you got to keep secrets. You got to be able to trust them, right? And so if a Jewish person is in an organization, the first person that Israel will approach if they're trying to get in there is that Jewish person. And so that is this like dual loyalty question that is impossible to answer. And that's gets to this heart of why I think that, I mean, we're here now, and I'm not saying we should destroy Israel. Certainly not saying that, because those are people, and they, you know, you can't fucking hurt, you know, you try not to hurt people. But I do think that it was a mistake to found the Jewish state, because just the existence of Israel as the Jewish state, that inherently places the dual loyalty question on every Jewish person around the world, whether they deserve it or not.
Hold on one second. So you could look at another stateless people right now, like the Kurds, which is a whole rabbit hole and stuff like that, who also have a diaspora that exists in some effect around the world. And if they were, I think, righteously at some point given land here, you could say the same thing about them. I think the largest part of the issue with Israel is the fact of the land where it was founded, more than anything. Not to say there wouldn't be a problem. Any land you founded on that previously belonged to someone else, there's always going to be a problem. I want to make that clear. But the fact that it was the holiest of the holiest land, literally written about in the oldest books that exist in the human fucking language.
Yeah, I would agree that's a bigger factor.
Yes.
I'm just saying this is an important factor to understand in terms of how intelligence agency operations, and especially like a Jeffrey Epstein type of operation, works.
Yes.
Right? Because a lot of the things that are actually playing out on the world stage right now are intelligence agency and organized crime style operations. And we need to understand that. And so when you look at the Jeffrey Epstein network, it's like, it's not not a mistake of why it's all Jewish people around him at the top, like mostly all Jewish people, is because like those are who you can trust with that kind of an operation, and those are who like duh,
Sure, yeah.
right? And it's the same. It's the same with all the other like organized crime groups, yakuza, mafia.
No, you make a good point.
Right?
It's always that way.
And so it's like, and so it gets I think that the people like I'll just say myself, when I'm talking about this, I get smeared as being anti-Semitic because I'm pointing out Jewish people in these contexts. Like Lucian Grange, for example, is involved in the Diddy suit, right? Although his name was mysteriously taken off of Lil Rod's lawsuit. Same with Universal Music Group, just fucking disappeared.
Funny how that happens.
But Lucian Grange is the CEO of Universal Music Group, and he's Jewish. And he seemed to be clearly implicated in all of the stuff that Diddy was doing, financing it, attending it, knowing what was happening at it. And I've not seen any evidence that he's associated with like Israeli intelligence. I've not seen any evidence that he's associated with Mossad or anything like that. But I certainly have seen stuff that looks like he kind of is acting in a mobster kind of way here in America. And so like when I look at the music industry as one example to kind of dive into a rabbit hole, like rat's nest real quick, the music industry has a lot of indications that there's still mob-like tendencies being utilized by some, probably not all, of the Jewish executives in the music industry. And there's a long history in the music industry of the Jewish mob specifically using that industry to launder money and to control things and to do all sorts of fucking operations, right? And so when you're looking at that type of operation, it is relevant if someone is Jewish or not. But that's not to say, and it's important not to conflate it, that every Jewish person is inherently a part of it, right?
Right.
And so when you look at the Israel dual loyalty thing that I was just talking on, it's unfortunate because Israel is what it is. If, for example, what was the Jonathan Pollard? Like Jonathan Pollard is a great example of like a Jewish person who's an American who rises up the ranks in America to high level in the American government and then turns and is a spy for Israel, right? And like another good example is Jeffrey Epstein. Dude was born in New York. Another good example is Leslie Wexner. Dude was born in Ohio, right? I'm pretty sure. He's American. No,
I believe he is American.
I'm pretty sure he's American, right?
Yeah. Can we check that, Leslie Wexner?
I think I'm confusing it because I got on that train and I was like, wait a minute, is Benjamin Netanyahu fucking born American? He's not. He's not, but
he moved here as a kid.
But that's what I'm
Cheltenham. Dayton, Ohio, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, right? And so that is this sort of dual loyalty question that is just messy, and it's unavoidable. And I think that any serious like CIA operative would understand that question, right? Like if you're a CIA operative and you're working alongside a Jewish man.
Do you know what happens the day one in CIA? They take them back to a room. They call it the red light room of the biggest espionage threats, and it's like Israel, China, and Russia.
Bingo, right?
They already know,
right? And it's obvious why you would be concerned about working alongside a Chinese person, right? It's obvious why you would be concerned about working alongside a Russian, right? And we have lots of evidence of Israel spying on America, doing covert operations against America, stealing technology from America, and documenting the 9/11 attacks in some strange way. At least elements of their government doing that. And so that's where it's like, the smear of this is an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory is a propaganda tactic. And it is very well used and overused, and it is destructive to actual anti-Semitism.
I agree 100%. And that's where my point I was making a couple minutes ago comes in, to where people just loosely pull on every person who happens to be Jewish and then also eliminate all the people who are non-Jewish to create like a smaller strike zone. Because then they can be accused of that, and it takes away from an important conversation that may have to happen.
And it's a complicated and a fine line that requires discernment. It requires deep research. And often you don't know if someone is Jewish. Like, it's not like everyone has a fucking Wikipedia page that will just tell you. And so it's like, you have to take it all with a lot of grains of salt, and you have to think very critically about it because ultimately, it is important to come back to remembering that even if you hate what Israel's doing, even if you hate that they're bombing children and you think that they're the worst thing ever and they don't even deserve to exist, even if that's you still got to remember that the dude next door to you that's Jewish, he's just a dude. He's just a wonderful dude raising his family. Like and like these people know intimately in their family, their grandparents come from a time when they saw what can happen if everyone turns on Jewish people.
That's right.
And even today, I mean, I would plead and a lot of people will be pissed off at this. I would plead that Jewish people should really work on growing a thicker skin. Like, and like, right? Like you should grow a thicker skin.
Unless he's like, cut the mics.
Right? And what I mean by that.
We were doing so well.
What I mean by that is that when a criticism of a Jewish person like Jeffrey Epstein is like an offense to Judaism, it's like, bro, calm down. Calm the fuck down. Yeah. Like, I am not criticizing you, right? And in the exact same way that like when you're growing up and you take offense at every little insult at you and you like get really reactive, people will start just fucking poking you just to get a reaction, right? And as a teacher, you see this with kids all the time. The kid that can't take a fucking joke, they're constantly tormented because then suddenly all the little kids are like, fucking Peter has a big nose. Like, Donnie looks stupid, right? And then they just get more, and it's like, just grow a thick skin. It's okay to like, don't worry if someone makes a jab at you that it's harmless. Don't worry if someone makes a funny and it is when it is harmless, right?
Yeah, I think
fine line.
Yes, there's a fine line, and there's still also a clear line there too. I'll fix that afterwards. Don't worry. Yeah. But like, you see like the recent example with Dave Portnoy. That's what, and there were people coming at him like, oh, and they were using your argument like, oh, grow some thick skin. If someone comes into your business, even if it wasn't his business, and puts up a sign like that, the sign said like "fuck" or something like that.
Specifically, fuck.
Imagine if that said "fuck the" and insert another race here. No one would argue with people, like going to get like with someone like Portnoy responding to that, being like, "Yo, fuck that," and calling out these.
I'm just thinking about it for a second.
If it said, fuck the. If it said that, 100% people would be behind, like being like, all right, who the fuck did this? 100%, no doubt in my mind. You'd have the people who are like, even like the most like.
What if it said fuck people?
Oh, I wouldn't be about. I would not be about that.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure that America wouldn't have a problem with it right now.
If he went after that, I would have no problem with him going after people. And yes, unfortunately, there would be people in America who'd be like, yeah, that's the patriarchy, man. But there'd be a lot of people who'd be like, yo, fuck that. That's racist as fuck. But you're right. There's a double standard.
There is a weird double standard.
There's a double standard on some stuff. But I'm saying if there were other race, it's because whites are like the top of the what's it called, the intersectionality curve or whatever. But if it's any minority group or whatever that was on that sign and you insert that word there, no one would be giving Portnoy shit for trying to call this out, but they're giving him shit right now because they're like, oh, you can't take it because you're Jewish. So I think there has to be like a clear line in the sand there. But
and
like
aside
you
from
said,
the morals,
it's
it's like that's a dumb fucking like bad move, bro. Don't fucking make that sign. Like that's not helpful to anyone. That doesn't help your fucking cause.
No,
right?
It doesn't.
And then also it's like then they're coming after Dave Portnoy for that. It's like bro, it's his private business, dude. Like he can fucking kick you out if he wants to. Like get over it, dude. That's how it goes. Don't don't bring in a sign into Julian Dory's podcast. It's like fuck Julian Dory, he's a shell, right? Duh. And it's like everything about that interaction is just like
I'd probably ask you why you have
garbage humans. I know, like you got a thick skin, and you'd be like, nah. And that's what I'm saying is that I'm not saying that we should just make it okay to fucking attack Jewish people. Definitely not saying that. What I'm saying is that where you see opportunities in your life to kind of take the high road and just like and reorient a situation into building a relationship instead of building a attack or a victimization when there are genuine opportunities that we find for those things, it's good to try to take them, right? Yeah. Because I think there's a lot of times when someone feels a certain way about Israel and a Jewish person takes that as like a personal offense and it becomes a character attack problem that becomes it widens the divide, right? Yep. Whereas I've met lots of Jewish people that don't take that reaction, and instead they're like, "Why do you think that?" Or they're like, "I don't agree with you," but like they will treat you as a whole person with other opinions too. And those people you just get along with them great, it's no problem. And it's like suddenly those are ways of interacting that bring us closer together.
Dude, that's how almost everyone I've talked to in my life is. The people who aren't like this are the weird people on Twitter who I don't know, who are behind a keyboard and are probably backed by every
Twitter is a rage fest that just prioritizes and promotes hatred and fighting and division.
We gotta not to be a total hippie here, but we gotta just get
love
along.
Each other.
Why can't everyone just get along? Yeah. Everyone, like you were saying, cooler heads have got to take the high road and prevail here.
I think we're in a growing period, right? We're in a period where like this conversation is opening and it's uncomfortable and it's hard and everyone is not, no one's a fucking expert. And even the experts have their dogma and indoctrination. Right. And so it's just this really messy conversation where I would hope that the people that are anti-Israel can grow to empathize more and understand Israel more. And I would hope that people that are pro-Israel can learn to empathize and understand more the plight of the Palestinians. And hopefully we can all just mature a little bit by little bit by little bit by having more conversations and more like in-person real interactions with people that are different than you and see the humanity in other people, because like violence is cycles, right? And it always will cycle. And if you just keep killing people, they'll keep killing you and you'll keep killing them and it'll never end.
Never end.
Yeah.
That's a great spot to close it, Ian Carroll.
Yes, sir.
This has been entertaining as hell.
Thanks, man.
I am very impressed with the depth of things you look at, and I appreciate you going through difficult topics and asking difficult questions. And there's people who are going to agree with you, disagree with you, all in between.
Still, yeah.
But yeah, things are always moving. You know, new information's always coming out, and I know you're going to be at the forefront of trying to get it.
Trying to learn.
Where can everyone find you?
You can find me on YouTube at Ian Carroll Show. That's where I'm making most of my stuff right now, trying to go longer digs. And then my Twitter is at Ian Carroll Show, although I'm being less and less active on it. And my website is canceliancarroll.com if you want to support me, get merch, or keep up with other kind of like new giveaways and stuff that I'm doing. So,
all righty. We'll have all the links down below. Thanks, Ian. See you, Doug. Everyone else, you know what it is. Give it a thought. Get back to me. Peace. Thank you guys for watching the episode. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and smash that like button on the video. They're both a huge, huge help. And if you would like to follow me on Instagram and X, those links are in my description below.